Well, hello, Sophie. How are you?
I'm very well, Rachel, and I'm very pleased to see you again, as always. This has become a bit
Yeah,
of a habit. I just miss it if we go a few days without it.
I know. And this is the first time I have sort of introduced us and said hello to everyone. So thank you for joining us on Dear Rach and Soph. We're not counting episodes anymore. One, maybe when we get to 100, we'll have some sort of celebration. How's that? Um,
I agree.
I was rushing because we're recording it this at night, and today I have been, actually, I'm not sure I'm allowed to say where I've been. I wrote in the morning, but I was rushing because I had to go and get a photo for something this afternoon. And then I came home thinking, oh, great, I'm going to walk the dog, and then make dinner and then do this and then, watch Farm Once Wife. It's over. And my middle son goes, I need to go shopping. And he wanted to go get clothes, and it was literally because he's going away next week. It's literally the only night he's got. So I was like, oh, so I just literally have been rushing all afternoon. So here I am, and I want to hear, what's your day been like?
Well, I've been in the office and had a fair bit to do, but because of our time zone difference, I have been watching Farmer Wants a Wife, and I, in fact, am missing
Oh,
half an
oh my,
hour to
yes, I
do the
forgot
podcast.
about that.
But I will be saying nothing because
Okay.
obviously you're behind and
Hmm.
you are paying much more attention to this show than I am. So I don't want to give anything away about
I
who's.
really hate it that we're behind. It's very annoying.
Well, I suppose you have to stay offline, right?
Yes, you
Yeah,
do,
from your
because
usual.
otherwise I don't really mind too much at this point in the screening, but when it gets towards, the final couple and it's really near the end, you want to see it on the screen. You want to see all that stuff. So yeah, we only spoke very recently, actually. Like our podcast is airing weekly, but we've been banking up a few, and yesterday we spoke. So
Yeah, we
but
did.
so you've been at work all day, and
Been at work
anything
all
else?
day and have a few things going on there, but also keeping up my country music life. And that is also part of my writing life because, as I might have said before, I firmly believe I wouldn't be writing novels if I hadn't
Mm,
started writing about country music and having a discipline of writing to an audience. And
yeah.
it's just that I think with the shrinking media for all art forms, really, we have
Yeah.
shrinking book pages, shrinking media for music. There was an artist I know pretty well who told me a few weeks ago that I was one of only 4 or 5 people in the entire country doing album reviews, not country music album reviews,
Just
but
just
album
album
reviews.
reviews out of all. Oh my goodness. And do yours go into publications or blog or both?
So mine's just for my own website.
Yeah.
I've never tried to place them anywhere. I don't want to. I actually don't write as much as I used to. The website or the blog used to be mainly written content.
Yep,
But since
yep.
I've been doing all these interviews and that's just accelerated, I just
Well,
don't have time to write because, as we know, writing takes thought. And to
so
write an
does
album
podcast.
review, yes, but to
Oh,
write an
time
album
anyway.
review, I need to listen to well, I like to listen to the album quite a few times,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then I need to find a way into talking about it. So this is where I think it's helpful with fiction. It's I do try to think about how I'm going to describe the experience of listening to that album in a way that includes the reader and doesn't rely on technical information to say, oh, it's this many minor chords or this many major chords, whatever it
And
is.
also technical information, I suppose, in they don't necessarily have had to listen to it to
That's
start with.
right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's trying to convey the experience of that, presuming that they haven't heard anything or may
Yeah.
have heard 1 or 2 singles. And so that would take a while for me to listen to the album multiple times, let it sit in my brain, then think of a way to talk about it. So, yes, long story short, I don't write as many reviews because I
News.
don't have as much time to have that marination going on.
Yeah.
Um, but I am listening to the albums before I interview. So, for example, tomorrow I'm interviewing Troy Casadele, who is the
Oh
most
wow. Even
awarded
I
gold
don't see.
guitar recipient ever. And I've had his album early and I've just been mainlining it essentially,
Ah,
just back to
cool.
back to back to back, because I like to get it to the point where it's just running around and around in my head and I
Yep.
can I can pluck lyrics out of my memory if I need to while I'm doing the interview.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
So yeah, so that's I'm still listening to the albums. I'm just talking about them in a different way, I guess. So that's
Yeah.
part of that creative process. It is still helpful for fiction, I think, that I do that.
I want to ask you a question, Rach, because you've written the choir book. What was the title of that
A
one?
Belbird River Country Choir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Country choir. So, but what? Yeah. Have you ever thought of like writing a full-on country music book?
I thought about writing a country music romance story,
Yeah.
and then I just thought, I know too many people now. It's just going to be too close.
Okay. You can
And
give me all the information and then I can write it.
actually, that's not a bad idea because I just thought, yeah,
I'll give you half the royalties.
and enough people in the country music world know that I write books that it could be a bit too close. But so Belmont River Country Choir was a conscious decision to write something set in the Tamworth region because
Yep.
I knew that was as close as I would ever get to writing a country music novel.
Interesting. Oh, that's cool. So yeah, that's I guess today, as I said, it's not been a long time since we spoke yesterday, but I think yesterday I was probably still in panic mode because I had been finished the edits and was going to go back into my book today. And I was thinking this morning how writing life, well, mine, I don't know if you feel the same, maybe I'm just totally crazy, is such a roller coaster and up and down because, yesterday or Friday, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I can't do this. And there's no plot and there's no meaning to this book. And today I woke up and I'm like, quite like that part. And I only gave myself a small goal to sort of get back into it again after edits and stuff. But I was like, I can do this. I can do this.
I wonder if
Oh, I have a really random question for you because
okay.
when you research various things and stuff, have you got a tattoo?
No, I don't. Do you?
Neither have I. No, I don't. But I was thinking, and I've always been not a tattoo person at all in terms of
I don't
never
even
had.
have my ears pierced, Rach.
Oh, I do have that, as you
Tattoo
know.
would be a bit too
Wow.
far for me, I think.
Well, I've always been definitely, no, I wouldn't get a tattoo, just not interested, blah, 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 and sounds painful, even though I do have my ears pierced. And then today I was looking up, I know that I want my hero to have a tattoo. And as some of you probably have heard, I already have a cover for this book, even though it's not finished. And on the cover, the main character has a tattoo on her arm. So I'm having to think, well, what is it? So I was looking for a whole load of different types of tattoos, and I found this one today. It's a magic wand on your ankle. It looks really cute, and it just said, "Believe in your magic." And I was like, because I've got trust the magic, go with your gut. And I was thinking, if I was
Ah.
to get a tattoo, maybe I'd put that, believe in your magic.
Well, I think it's appropriate, right? Because
Yeah.
so much of what we do is about believing in magic, believing that
Yeah.
one day you can feel that panicky about what you're doing, and then the next day it's all right.
Mm.
I think that's a bit of magical thinking.
Yeah. And we'll get to talking about our guests in a second. So I just want to say one more thing on the tattoos is that today I saw Holden Shepherd, who is a Australia or WA writer. And because I was thinking tattoos, he has tattoos on he's got a few tattoos, I think, but he's got them on his forearms here. And so I asked him, what are they? Because I had to look close. And he's got Pearl Jam lyrics.
Oh,
And you may know them. I don't know. It's it said something like, we will die, I will die. It's said or something that I'll die, but I'll be born and I will die, but in between that is my time or something. And I don't know, it was that someone else will know exactly what I'm talking about, but I was like, oh, I love it if it's tattoo, it has to mean something, right? Anyway, so tell us if you've got any people writing tattoos.
one would hope the tattoo would mean something. Otherwise, you've been through all that pain
True.
for nothing. But I also should say one of the reasons why I wouldn't voluntarily do anything like that is for many, many years, whenever I had injections, I would
Yeah.
faint. It's because I had very low blood pressure.
I hate injections too, and blood
Yeah.
tests.
So
Terrible.
therefore, like a tattoo is just, I don't faint anymore, but
Yeah.
the
No,
lingers.
I think, and especially, it'd have to be a very small one if I was going to do it.
As a little tip, if anyone does have a problem fainting with needles, the way I got past it was I very purposefully went to acupuncture
I
for
love acupuncture.
years.
Actually. I had that when I had I'm not going to say bad back, issues
No,
with my back. Well, I've
your
had some
relationship with your
acupuncture.
back, yes.
Yeah, my back has endured some acupuncture to try and, yeah.
But it desensitized me to needles. That's what happened.
Yeah,
So I just got used
that's a
to
good
it
point.
happening all the time. It's
Yeah,
like,
so
oh,
if you
no, I
want to
don't.
get a tattoo but you hate needles, go get some acupuncture.
Sorry. And then
we are the
your body will get used to it.
See, this is Dear Rach and Soph. we can offer you advice on anything. Anyway, tonight we have a guest, don't we?
We do. And before we move on to the guest side, just to follow on from what you just said about the advice. So Becky, the great Becky Cole, one of the best Australian country music artists,
Yeah.
she was doing some onstage banter, and she just said, "You don't come to a show, you get a prescription from your doctor."
I love it.
To the audience. So there you go. You're not
That's
just
good. I need to go see it.
You got a prescription from us for various things, including how to desensitize yourself to needles. But yes, we'll go to our guest. And so again, through the magic of technology, I'm going to put us on pause. And then when we are back, we will have a guest with us. So I'll see you on the other side, Rach.
Yeah. Hi, we have Renae Black here with us today. I'm super excited. Thank you for joining us, Renae.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I'll just give a little spiel about you, which I've stolen mostly from your website. Renae lives in Queensland with, I love this, you've got, I saw it yesterday and now I've completely lost it because I'm so professional. I'm on the wrong part of your website. So Sophie's like laughing her head off going, but you see, Sophie, I planned on being professional, but then I had a crazy afternoon and I didn't get, time to be professional. So I promise that I'll be better.
The thing is, Rach, this is our podcast, so we set the terms of what's professional.
So sorry, Renae, for this terrible intro. Sophie's usually much better than me, but Renae currently lives in Queensland, and I love this. You share your house with a husband, 2 little bookworms, which is great. I never say die goldfish. How old is your goldfish?
It actually died.
Oh, no. You got to update your website. Do you know what's so funny? Because I had in my, I think it was Work Wives, I said something about to my budgie or whatever, which you'll probably be dead because he was like 14 years old or something. And yeah, he died as well. Commiserations. I'm sorry for your loss.
It did only die last week, but yeah.
Okay. Well, still close. Sorry. Anyway, you also have some chickens. Ryder Henry. I hope none of them have. I hope they're still up with you. Okay, and Lady Clucket, love it. And your Australian red cattle dog Tamba, which makes you perfect to write. It sounds the rural romance that you do. Renae's debut book came out last year. Is that right? Just checking it out.
Congratulations.
Yes, congratulations. And it was called On the Down Low. Did you choose that title?
I did. It's the only title so far that's stuck.
I love it.
It's the first one.
So you can read On the Down Low, and you can also get Renae's most recent release, which is Red Dirt Home. And that came out just earlier this year. And from judging by the feedback, it looks like it's going really well. Lots of people, I posted on my Facebook page because last night Renae watched Farmer Wants a Wife for me, and I said, check out her latest book, Red Dirt Home. And so many people said they'd already checked it out, they loved it, and other people were going to get it. So I've got a copy. I've got a copy down here, and I can't wait to read it as well. So tonight you have some questions for us, but I think Sophie has some questions for us before we get started on your questions.
Well, I do, because all 3 of us are watching Farmer Wants a Wife, and as you mentioned, Renae's doing recaps. Did a recap for you because Rach, you are posting about it very professionally. I don't know how you actually get that out, considering everything else you're writing. So what I'd really like to know is not who you think the farmers will end up with, but in fact, who your favourite farmer is. So Renae, you go first.
Oh, well, there's a lot of good ones.
There are.
A lot of good looking ones and a lot of young ones.
Yeah.
So if we're taking age out of the equation, which I think we should.
Absolutely, yeah.
I really like Dustin because I really like his kind of joking. He's such a jokester, and he's not afraid. He's not afraid of offending them, and I like that.
I'd say he's my favorite as well. Like,
really,
there's just something about him, a little bit cheeky. He seems really real and genuine. And yeah, like some of the others are, like I'd say Bert and Joe are pretty good. The good-looking sort of.
They're my favourite too.
Yeah. I was going to say Dean and Joe, but Dean and Bert, your favourite? I do
Bert and Joe are my favourite.
Yeah, Bert and Joe, sorry, that's right. I do like them all though, as Renae said, so it's very close. It reminds me a little bit. I was reading someone do a review of Emily Henry's latest book recently, and they said it's a 5-star, and this is the order I love, but basically all of them are 5-star. Like they love all her books. They're all 5 stars. Just, and that's, I think I pretty much like all of them.
Oh, okay.
Although I'd say that Dean and Tom are my least favorite.
You know, Sophie, because you like Bert, he actually lives like 10 minutes away from me.
You know
That's
him.
hilarious. Is that a bit odd though? Like when you look at it going, oh, maybe I've driven past him.
Yeah.
Actually,
yeah.
one of the readers on my Facebook page said that she taught Joe like when he was in primary school, because she lived there for a few years.
All right.
So she said he was a very nice guy then. She hopes he finds love. So
well, look, I think my taste in farmers betrays the fact that I am fond of a broad shoulder, and I think both of those farmers have a broad shoulder. So there you go.
It's a smile that gets me, and they all have quite good smiles, I think.
And well, that's actually less shallow than what I just admitted to, Rach. So that's good.
I know. I used to say I was an arm girl at school, so
this could go down quite a path.
Yeah, should we stop talking about? I've got something in my throat here. Should we stop talking about Farmer Once at Wife and ask Renae? To ask us, Renae, you wanted to come on to talk about a particular topic. I think it was.
Yes, we thought we'd get Renae on to ask her questions rather than reading anything out. So Renae, go ahead.
Yeah, so I am so excited to come on to pick both of your brains about literary agents. So where I'm at the moment is I've had 2 books released, which has been fantastic, and I've got a third one that's an ebook only, comes out in August this year, which is also very cool. But then at the moment, that's it for me. So I'm not contracted to write anymore. I do have a book out on submission, but I've got there's no release plans.
Sure.
So I'm kind of in that space where I'm thinking, is it worth pitching to agents? Is it time to start kind of going down the agent path, not just the publisher path? And who better to ask than Rach and Soph? Especially Soph, I'm really keen to get your perspective as an agent and now a publisher. So that's really cool. But I thought, can we just start by going, do you both have an agent at the moment?
Yeah, it's a good question to ask. Good question. I'm glad you asked. It's good.
Yeah.
You want to go first, Soph?
Yes, I do. And even though it's actually because I work in the industry, because I work as a publisher by day. So I just thought it was advisable to have an agent to help keep things separate. And also just to have someone to talk to about ideas I have, and we don't actually talk that often, but every now and again I'll just say, look, can I have a chat? I've got some ideas that I want to run past you, and she can ask me good questions about those ideas and help me shape my thinking around whether they're viable or stupid. And that doesn't mean she says they're stupid. She'll just ask questions so that I start to think about them a bit more, and also just to keep track of various things. So yeah, even though I'm knowledgeable about the industry, I do like having an agent, and Rach, you do as well, I think.
I do. I have had an agent. I didn't have an agent for my very first contract. So very similar to you. I got a digital published book first, and then through that got me kind of connection to get the print book deal. And so that was all I actually got that through like a friend of a friend, but I was pitching at Romance Writers Australia conference to everyone kind of around the time, and they were all my publisher was also looking for people, but the year that it came out, which was the following year after I sold it, Harlequin, who published Jilted, they put it in all the bags at conference, which was really quite lucky because it came out just in June. That was great. But I was pitching to the agent at that conference, the international agent. So I have an agent I'm not going to actually say her name just because of various reasons, but I'm happy to talk to you about that later, Renae, and if anyone wants to know. But I have an agent from America, and she's in New York now, and I pitched to her at a Romance Writers of Australia conference, and we got along well. There was a good connection there. I've met her a few times over the years, and like Sophie, she's often someone who I can, if there is, I've had a relatively smooth path to publication and journey of publication, but there's been various times where having an agent has been useful. One of the ones I'll say was when I changed publishers recently, or because I'm terrible at getting rid of anyone or dumping anyone. So the thought of having that conversation when I was very respectful and liked my previous publisher was horrible. But then this opportunity came up, so she sort of navigated that. And the other thing she did is a few years before that, quite a few years now, I actually got a out of the blue offer from another publisher, and I almost fell off my chair because it went from, you know, me submitting and getting rejections, submitting and getting rejections, and then they'd seen that I'd finished writing one of my books, and they said, "Here's an offer." And it was bigger and better than I'd ever had before. This is probably about 7 years ago now, and I didn't know what to do. And my publisher was the one that went back. I'm sorry, my agent went to the publisher and said, you know, here's that. So there has been a few times where I would say she's been super, super useful. But yeah, I won't say anything else now because you've probably got more questions. But I'm happy, to talk on that. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Renae, would you like me to just address what you raised, which is whether you should look for an agent at this point in time?
I'm happy to get your, I've got a list of questions here, but I'm so happy to hear your thoughts.
So part of the tricky thing about trying to get an agent in Australia is there just aren't many of them. And even if all the published authors, like already published authors, wanted an agent, they can't all have an agent because there just aren't enough agents. It's a fact of us having a small market, and also the just numbers of book sales being relatively small because agents work on commission. They need to be selling, their authors need to sell enough books for them to make a viable amount of money to stay in business. That's just a fact of life. We are in a capitalist economy, and you've got to make the money to do that. So it's a hard business to stay in and do successfully, because in Australia, to be a successful agent, you need to have a lot of clients.
Yeah.
And that means you are doing a lot for a lot of different people at any given time. And so you can just be scrambling to keep up a lot of the time because you've got a lot of clients and you want to look after them all equally. In the United States, because the market's bigger, people are selling more books, I would imagine they have a smaller number of clients because they're doing bigger deals. And the other thing that happens in the US is that they specialize a lot of the time in particular genres. And this is where it's pertinent to you, Renae, in particular, is when you're writing in a genre of fiction, particularly commercial fiction, you're probably not going to find many agents who have specialist knowledge in it. That doesn't mean they can't effectively represent you, but it does mean that they won't necessarily know which publishers are doing exactly that. And I could be wrong about this because I haven't been an agent for a while, and the agents who are out there may well know more about genre fiction than I think they do. But they think that it's likely, just on sheer numbers of agents available, that there are going to be fewer of them who know about your genre. So what I'd also say to you, as someone who's successfully been published, is that you went and got those deals for yourself. Even though you don't have anything lined up as a contract, you have done it before. So it's always the consideration for an author in that situation of what an agent can do for you. Now, it could just be that they take the hassle, time, effort of submitting to publishers away from you. And that could be worth the price of commission, right? It's like, I am quite happy to pay that commission to someone just to manage that, because I don't really want to do it. It's a lot of follow-up. I don't really want to have to do all of that admin even. And that's, sometimes you just want the agent there so they can do some admin for you, so they can just manage the business of your writing. That's really their function in a lot of cases. So that could be the reason why you want to have it, or it could be that you don't feel you have enough direct contact or knowledge of who's publishing what in Australia, so that you can successfully submit, and so that agent can bring that knowledge of who is looking for what. And even if they're not a specialist in your genre, they will know who's publishing what sort of books. It just means that they may not read your genre. So you may have an agent who is great at the business side, but you may not feel that creative connection with them. And that can be okay as well. They don't need to be all of the things for you.
That's what I was going to say as well. Like, we'll ask your questions of us in a sec. But it depends what do you want in an agent, or maybe you don't even know what you want in an agent. Should we? Because I've got a couple of thoughts, but maybe we get you to ask questions and then see where we go from there.
So, and I think you both touched on things that I find really interesting. And one of my questions was what you were saying, Sophie, around the genres and us, do you think that some genres are more suited to an agent, or I guess an agent's interest, because some of rural romance is very, especially here in Australia, it's very in Australia and doesn't really sell that well overseas.
That's what I was actually going to ask you. Do you want to, that was one of my questions I moved, but in like, do you want to stay in Australia? Like obviously just focus mostly in Australia, or do you have ambitions to sell, either rural or other types of writing overseas?
And at the moment, I'm very happy with just Australia.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing, what you were saying, Rach, around why am I considering an agent?
Yeah.
There's so much to learn in the publishing industry. And even though I'm up to like book 3 now, which is scary, I feel like I've only just cracked the surface.
Yeah.
So maybe an agent would help me to kind of understand the scene and the industry, and pick up things that maybe I'm not doing so well, contracts and deal, all of that
Yeah, because
stuff.
sometimes there's things that you don't even know. Like my agent will, ask for things that I would not have thought of asking for. Whereas Sophie, you may, know those things without, thinking about it. And it's not always a yes to these things. I mean, I think for me, there's the financial loss if you get an agent, but sometimes that's okay because they give you a lot of other help. And one of the things I would say is, if you might be able to find an agent who, if you, like, whether you want someone who's editorially going to help you like going to bounce ideas off, it's sometimes that person to have when the publisher, you're not contracted to have but you want some sort of feedback on whether this story is working and stuff. So if you want that, I'd particularly be looking for agents. And I know in Australia there's some that do that, and then some that, just deal with the money and the finance side. So it really, I think you should think about, why you want some. Can I just also say, I think you're really wise because I think going into it and thinking I still have so much to learn, which I think I feel the same, is not what I see a lot of, like in new aspiring authors. Sometimes people just think they know everything. And so I think it's really wise of you to go, there is so much still to know and learn. So I'd be thinking about why you want one. The other thing though, apart from that you're going to give money away, they might be able to get a bigger advance. Doesn't matter if necessarily, it might not matter, because to me the advance is not as important as the royalties and the numbers, because I had a very small advance to start with, but I earned it out quickly, kind of thing. So you're going to get the sales. If you're going to get the sales, then you're going to get the money in the end. I'd like to ask you something about advance in a second, Sophie, actually, but before I forget, I was just going to say, no, I've probably forgot it. It was really going to be good. Oh, no. The other reason is I've got a friend who's also in a similar situation to you, wondering if they should get an agent. They've had 3 books out. And one of the things they're thinking about is maybe that an agent can get them more stuff actually inside the publisher. And again, Sophie, maybe you can tell us about this, like in terms of often us authors, we are not great at promoting ourselves and standing up for ourselves and asking the questions that need to be asked about, hey, what are you going to do for my book? And can you do this? And this is one of the things that my friend is thinking, like she's got a great relationship with the person who's published her books and stuff and could probably get another contract with them. But is that contract the best contract? And are that publisher actually the best people for her? So Sophie, I guess I want to say, what do you think of that? But also, I know a couple of years ago, because this is kind of on the agent, but also the advance, like an agent will try and get a bigger advance for you. They will, as far as I can, if I'm wrong, Sophie. They'll try and get a bigger advance. And years ago I heard, and at this stage, I didn't think this was really a thing in Australia, and I'm not sure now that's why Sophie would be the one to say this, but it definitely was in the US. The bigger advance, the more money they're probably going to put into promoting you and publicizing and marketing. That's what I was told in the US, and I didn't think it was the same in Australia. So I'd love to hear what you think about that, Sophie.
Not necessarily the case, because it depends very much on the book, and every book is promoted differently. There's no rule for how books are promoted. You're right, Rach?
I just muted myself like coughed out a lung.
Hope you didn't it sounded like you might have inhaled like, as in
good
water. So Yeah, it depends very much on the book. Every book is looked at it on its own merits. That's what I'm trying to get at, which is that every book, when it comes through acquisitions and we want to acquire it, we're looking at what we can do to do the best by. Now, that doesn't mean that the author or their agent can't ask questions about what else could be done. And quite often as a publisher, I'm trotting off to ask questions about, can we try this? Can we do this? And because within the publishing company, I am that book's advocate. I'm not its agent, but I am its advocate. So yeah, agents will usually, yes, try to get you a bigger advance if they can. When I was an agent, I used to talk to the author about what they were most interested in. Did they want a big advance or did they want career longevity? Because those things can be mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
If you go for too big an advance and it doesn't earn out, then you run the risk that you will not be published again by that publisher or by any publisher, because once you lost that first publisher, it can be tricky to go somewhere else. But part of what else agents can do, and that I did on a semi-regular basis, is what I'd classify as mediation, even though there weren't disputes, but it was more just trying to resolve some impasses. So there was one case where there was a cover impasse, and this does come up a lot because covers are quite emotional things. So there was a cover, the publisher had a particular idea of which cover they wanted. They'd gone through quite a few concepts and I'd seen some. They presented a couple to the author who did not like either of them and strongly did not like either of them. And so we had an impasse, and that's the word the publisher used to me was, we are at an impasse. So I remember thinking, oh dear, this is a tricky situation. So I thought about how to resolve it because I thought, well, you know, they wanted a photo of the author on the cover. He hadn't been that keen on that idea. So anyway, I talked to him about it and we got to a point where there could be a photo. And then I was trying to find a way where everyone could get a bit of what they wanted. And I guess that's part of the art of negotiation. So I said to him, which color would you most like to see on the cover? Like, what is the color that speaks most to you? And he told me the color. So I went back to the publisher and just said, look, you're going to have a photo. He's agreed to that, but can you give us something and actually make sure that the cover design incorporates this color that he really, really wants to have on the cover? She said, yes, absolutely, we can do that. And so then we got a cover that everyone ended up loving, which was great. And it was the designer who has the credit for that. But it was just, I suppose, what I was doing was trying to come at it from a completely different point of view, which is not what are the commercial objectives here, and not how can I protect my patch, which may or may not have been going on, but I think is often the case, particularly when someone's in the vulnerable position of having their photo on a cover of a book, and it is a vulnerable position, and even when having your name on the cover of a book can be a vulnerable position. So it was my job to try to work out what was motivating both sides, what they were most worried about, and then try to find a solution. And that can also come up in the editorial process, and that's where I had some involvement, was where there was a structural edit that the author was devastated by. And as an author, I understand how that can feel. And so again, it's that point of thinking, well, what's each side interested in here? What are they trying to come to? We all want to make, fundamentally, everyone involved wants to make the best book possible, and they want that to be a success, and they all want to be happy with it. So it's thinking, okay, well, if we all have that in mind, we all have the interests of the book in mind. So let's try to work out a solution where we can get to that with no one feeling like they're devastated. And I certainly don't want my client crying in the corner the whole way through the editorial process. So so sometimes that's what the agent does. And that's not about negotiating the deal. That's about keeping the relationship going.
I was just going to say quickly that, so like a role of an agent, like you might be thinking now, oh, it's about trying to get another contract, right? Making sure that I'm, maybe I'll be staying with that publisher. If not, it's the agent might be able to ship me out to the best people and all that sort of stuff. But there is also, so there's a kind of like, I feel like the contractual side on the business, there's the editorial like relationship that you might have and support that you get from an agent. And then there's also like, I feel like what Sophie's talking about, I've been published now for 12 years, I think, if my maths is right. And as I said, most of that time I've been very lucky and it's been pretty smooth, but there have been times like that where I haven't liked, something on a cover, where I have had strong feelings about an editorial report, or just other little things. And having an agent in those times is always great, because it means that you don't have to be the bad guy. You can just and the agent, I feel like agents are very good at sort of what they do, and without sort of mostly I've got to be careful because Sophie's here, she's been an agent, so I was going to say without like ruining relationships and stuff. But before one other thing I just want to say is be careful if you are going to get an agent, or if you're looking for an agent. I think I may have even mentioned this on our first podcast when we talked about how Soph and I met. I actually sent an email to Sophie when I got my offer for my first print book, because I didn't have an agent. As I said, I got that through my own sort of connections and stuff. And I got an offer and sent it to Sophie and 2 other agents who I won't mention. But Sophie, for whatever reason at the time, I can't even remember, was not, it wasn't going to be the right fit, but she was very professional and polite, and also said to me, look, I can't represent you going forward, but if you need any like advice about the contract or whatever, feel free to reach out. And I really respected that opinion. And then another agent also said to me, look, I don't think that they thought that at the time Harlequin was a boilerplate contract, and that because it was overseas for Mills and Boon, and so they thought there was no room for them to really do anything for me, so there was no point. And that was really, I really respect them too, because they didn't just go, hey, she's already got a deal, I will take that 15% or whatever. But she also said, actually I don't think she did, I think it was only Sophie that said I could tell her about the contract if need be. The other agent I sent to, who I did have a prior connection with, actually didn't even ask to look at my book or anything, didn't say really anything in the email. They just sent me a contract to sign with them. And I had, because I used to wrote a non-fiction book years ago, and I had her as an agent for my non-fiction book. And that didn't ever sell. And I think that it's better to have no agent than a bad agent. And that's the thing. That's why it's, really got to be careful in doing your research before you jump into bed with someone. And I'd learned that, but sort of had kind of forgotten, and someone reminded me about her when I got my contract, and I thought, oh, I'll just see what she says. And yeah, she didn't ask to read the book, she didn't ask anything about like where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do with it, for my future. And so because probably if I hadn't heard the email from Sophie, I would have been like, oh, maybe maybe I should go with her. But I just thought, no, that doesn't gel right with me. She's just taking the money. I've already got the contract. She's all about just getting the money, not about like building me as an author and as developing a relationship. And I really feel like you want someone who you can, I mean, you don't need to be besties, but you want someone who you can have a good working relationship with, and also who does like your work and does sort of is passionate about what you write and gets you. And not everyone is going to get you, like, you know what I mean? So that's some things to be wary of. Just wanted to say. And the other thing I'll say, because I forget things quickly, is one of the reasons that I went for a US agent was, apart from the 3 that I tried originally, I don't think I ever tried to get anyone else in Australia that time around. I'd been writing for like 17 years or 15 years and had tried back in the day with terrible things, so no wonder. Like I probably have a blacklist on all the agents in Australia anyway, because they're like, but I wanted to get a US agent because I thought, and that's why I asked you originally, like where do you want to go, because I thought, well, I've got this contract in Australia, but I don't have connections overseas, and getting you can actually get published. Quite a few people in Australia have got published without having an agent. We've got lots more different channels you can go through, and you can meet people at conferences more than you can. I mean, those things happen in the US, but as Sophie said, it's such a bigger thing, it's less likely to make those connections. And there's lots of submissions that are available in Australia. So in the US, I thought if I want to get published over there, I need a US agent. Now that I have had 2 books published in the US, neither of them really did well. Both of them kind of came about through my publisher anyway. So, whether that, what I'm saying is that part of being my agent has not really worked out for me. But other times I've been really glad that she's been there to negotiate things and to chat about things through and stuff. So yeah, there's lots of things to consider. You have more questions for us?
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that's like, one of the really good things around the Australian publishing industry is that you can do it without an agent, whereas most of the big, the big names over in the US and the UK, you really do need an agent just to get any in. So I think that's a real strength of our publishing industry
definitely.
in Australia. Yeah. Oh, so much info, but such good info. Sophie, having been an agent and having now being a publisher, do you find when people submit to you, are you looking for different things as a publisher as opposed to when you're an agent?
Yes, because I only publish nonfiction. And when I was an agent, I represented children's fiction and nonfiction. So having said that, I look at our submissions inbox, and we're not accepting fiction submissions at the moment because once the gates open, there's a lot that comes through. But in the past, I did look at the fiction submissions and sent the occasional thing onto the fiction publisher, and she did publish some things that way. So I still... and I read a lot of fiction, and I also love children's books. So I'm always interested in looking at those submissions anyway. And I will take pictures at conferences on behalf of my fiction and children's colleagues. So I've still got one ear on that, I guess, just because I think a great story is a great story. And you can tell when someone has a handle on their story when they're pitching it to you, or written submissions as well. So, but yeah, at the moment for me as a publisher, just nonfiction.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you were an agent, like even now still, what kind of things really make a manuscript like really stand out to you?
Good question.
It is a good question, and it's really hard to answer, because I think it's the same thing when we're readers choosing books in a shop. You just kind of know it when you see it. So you can read a back cover blurb, and that gets you half the way into the book, and then you start to look at the first page maybe, and you think, oh yeah, I really want to read that. And there's no one book that appeals to every person on the planet. So it's just about, as an agent or as a publisher, looking at a submission and that confluence of my personal taste, I guess, and my reading background and what I think readers will love. And we do tend to work off, I don't want to say it's not pure instinct. So I don't want to say instinct. It's sort of like informed instinct, which is that I'm coming into it as a reader with a certain amount of knowledge and background, and then letting my instinct dictate certain things, like that sense we get, like the little chill up the spine of, oh, this is going to be really good. So what I can always tell is the difference between something that is really intended for publication, even if it's not by me, and something that is not. And that comes from how it's written, and it comes from the author's intention and their own experience. And it's, again, an indefinable thing. But I just tend to say you can tell when someone is writing something for someone else, when they want to be a storyteller, where they're not writing out of ego or purely out of ego, because you have to have a certain amount of ego to do it, but they're not writing just to write or to be seen to be writing or to prove something to themselves or to prove something to their friends. They're writing because they want to communicate something to someone else. And that is an intention that, as I said, it flows through, and you can see it in published books. If you're a reader, you know when something's working. Even if it's not for you, you can tell that there's something going on there. So it's part of the mystical aspect, I guess, of what we do, which is that you set the intention and then it flows through to the page. And it's I suppose maybe what it is a sense of assurance in the writing, a sense of confidence from the writer, that you can just relax. I often talk about it being like seeing musical artists perform when they walk out, and you just know as an audience member you can relax, they've got you. They're there, they're confident, and they're at ease in themselves, and they're going to just hold the space for you. As writers, we have to hold the space for the reader from the very first page, so that they can just relax and enjoy the ride and know that we're going to look after them, and we're not going to make them jump through hoops and do any kind of work to try to understand what's going on. They're just going to have a great time. Even if it's a sad story, they're in safe hands, and they're going to have some kind of experience that they will remember and hopefully enjoy.
Yeah. Authenticity, it sounds like.
That's a great word. Yeah. Authenticity and voice. I think it's a voice that stands, like, when you was talking about that, that's the writer's voice, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's something you can't really teach, just something that you develop
Yeah.
and you have or you don't
Yeah.
have.
I think that's it. And it's part of what's tricky about trying to learn writing or teach writing, or say you teach writing, is that I'm not sure it can be taught. I think you can certainly learn craft. You can certainly learn how to structure and all those. So that's part of the craft, I guess. But that writing impulse and instinct and talent can't be taught. It's either there or it's not. So that talent can be shaped and
Refined,
developed, matured,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure it can be taught.
I think I agree.
Yeah. And sorry, Rach, but one more for Sophie.
No, that's okay. I'm happy to listen to Soph. She's my therapist now, so it's all good.
I'm just interested, when you were, an agent, did you get more submissions from like aspiring authors yet to make their debut, or authors who had a title or two under their belt?
Far more from aspiring authors, and that's the case for us as publishers receiving submissions as well. There are a lot of people out there writing manuscripts, but as I'm quite fond of saying when I give talks, and I just did one to the Emerging Writers Festival. I do a talk every year for them called Pitch Perfect, where I talk about how to pitch a work. So like things you should think about when you're pitching it, and then how to structure your letter. And then I also take questions. There are a lot of people who have absolutely no business submitting anything to anyone, and they'll do it anyway. And it's usually impatience that's the cause of that. They finish something and they think, yippee, I'm going to send it out into the world. They don't stop to think whether it's ready to go, whether it should be seen, whether it may need some more time. And they can really defeat themselves before they start that way, because a first draft that is sent out half cooked is always going to receive a no, and it won't be looked at again. If they come back in a year's time and say, I've reworked it, it's had 5 more drafts, the publisher who said no to them will say no again, because they've already said no. So whenever
so not only will they say no again, but wouldn't that be annoying? Like if I was a publisher, I'd just be like, blacklist you.
That's why we say no. So we told you the first time it's no, and you had your chance, because we just have so many things coming in and not enough time to read them that we're not going to read something twice.
And what I'll say, for good or bad, I've seen that agents and publishers seem to have good memories with who submitted to them. Like, so they will remember the good and the bad. Do you, like, if Renae does want to submit to an agent in Australia, I'm not going to ask names or whatever, although I'm happy, Renae, to give you some off camera later thoughts on that. But what should she do in terms of a query letter? When, I mean, like, so many times we hear, or how to write a query when you're not published and you're trying to sell your book. Like, I'm curious, like, as an author who's already had a few books, like, do you talk about those? Like, how should she try and sell herself? Is she just selling her next book, or is she selling herself the backlist?
Selling herself, because Renae, you've had books published. Effectively, you've got a career in motion, right? So you say, I have had these books published. I'm thinking, I would like to continue writing. I have this new project. It's in the same genre as the previous book, so I'm continuing in this vein. There's not the words you're going to say. You'll say it in your own voice. But not presenting yourself as an author with a career, and just saying, I've decided that the time's right to have an agent. I'd love you to look at my work and love to talk further. That's really what it is, because you're auditioning them as much as they're auditioning you, because you'll be paying them. As the author, you're paying the agent, and even though there often feels like there's a power differential where the agent's got the power, ultimately you as the client are paid.
So true.
So you audition them as well, and as Rachael said, and it was very good advice, better no agent than a bad agent. So the bad bit can be just not a good fit for you.
True.
I have someone who offers to represent you, and you just think, I don't know that I want to work with this person. For whatever reason. So, and that's
there, definitely. And it's interesting that you said that about the power dynamic, because I think that's so true. Like, this is often a bit of a tangent, but I've always found that, like, I almost feel, and I know a lot of people that feel this way, although I've got a good relationship with my agent and I, consider us to be friends, which is not necessarily a good or a good thing, I would say. But I always feel like this is probably why I need an agent. It's like I am bothering her kind of thing, or like, you know, not bothering her, that's the wrong word, but it's like asking her if this is okay kind of thing. And I have to remind myself sometimes that, yeah, in the end, she works for me. But it is that interesting dynamic, isn't it? Because they choose who they're going to work with, and most of them have plenty of opportunity. Like, you know, as you said, there's more agents. I mean, more writers than agents, right?
Yeah.
So it's that kind of thing. In some way, she works for me, but I also need her, you know, like, so it's a very interesting working relationship. And so you really want to make sure you go into it. And I think so many of us don't necessarily. It's like, because it's hard to get an agent, especially if you're getting one before, there might be people listening, you know, who are not published. You go into it just thinking, I just want someone, you know, I just need someone to help me. And I think in hindsight for me, and having friends who have, you know, had multiple agents and parted ways with them for various reasons, I would say two things, and that's don't rush into a relationship unless you feel like, have a few discussions beforehand, ask for Zoom conversations, make sure, you know, ask how they feel about various aspects of the industry and what their plans for you as well, just as much as your plans for them. But also make sure there's an out clause in your contract too, so you've kind of got some really clear sort of guidelines, and if you do decide it's not for you, there's a really straightforward professional way to exit out of the situation, rather than, you know, worry about it for a long time. So yeah, that's my bit of advice.
Yeah, no, that's great advice too, because it's kind of like, you know, I can't think of the word, but those vanity publishers, you know,
Yeah.
I'm sure are like, you know, the same equivalent in agent world.
Yeah, there are definitely as well. That's the thing, you know, with manuscript assessors too. And I think we've talked about this, Sophie, like, anyone can say they're a manuscript assessor, right? Anyone can say they're an agent, really, I think. Kind of, you know,
They can, yeah.
editor.
There is the Australian Literary Agents Association, and not all agents are members of that, but any agent you're looking to submit to, you should be checking their website, seeing who their clients are, making sure that they are representing some fiction that is like yours, and they may not have exactly your genre, but if you wouldn't want to submit to someone who's only representing poetry or literary fiction. So you just do a bit of research that way, and so that's in the course of investigating whether they're a legitimate business or not. Don't go with any agent who's asking you to pay them
money,
fee or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other tips? Any other, you know, if they say this, avoid that, run the other way, look for that exit.
Well, I think if they're asking you to pay a fee up front, that means that's someone you should investigate clearly. I think these days, because you can research pretty much everything, you can find out if these agents have done deals, because you can see if they're representing clients who are published. You can just Google them generally. You can ask Rach. Rach could ask me, that sort of thing. Camera for any tips.
Yeah.
And then in terms of an overseas agent, I think they really need to know the market here well enough to be able to effectively represent you. They need to know who's publishing what. They need to have relationships with those people so they can contact them and say, I'm representing Renae and she has this manuscript. Because if the publishers here don't know that agent, they may look at their email, but they're probably not going to do it in a hurry because they don't know them, because it is about the relationships. And part of being an agent is keeping up the relationships, keeping up the knowledge of who is publishing what, because that can change, especially with fiction. It can really shift. That they just think, well, we have this many rural romance authors on the list, we're not taking any more. That can be part of why you're not picked up. It's not personal to your writing or like your manuscript. It's actually our list doesn't have a slot for you.
Yeah.
And just on that whole US versus Australia, sounds awful, but you know what I mean? That's why I do think it's really important to know what you want going forward in your career, because if you wanted to expand into different genres that are more popular overseas, or you would like to really have a diehard desire to be published by certain overseas, romance publishers or whatever, then I would say you probably do want a US agent, and that selling into those markets first are more important than selling into Australia, because if you've sold into Australia, it's quite hard to get a UK. That's the experience I've had, Sophie, and other people, because the UK, Australia's so part of the UK's market kind of thing, a big part of it. So
I
and
could go into an extended riff about foreign rights if you want.
yeah, well, maybe we should do another episode on foreign rights. Take a note, because it would be, and and the same, like the US is, their own thing, and they don't really care what your sales are in Australia or anything about that. It's just where you fit for them. But saying that, I think if you're published in the US and you don't have a home base in Australia, it's hard to build a name here. Like, so I wrote an article years ago for Heartstock. It's like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Like, most people are not big in more than one territory. And correct me if you think I'm wrong, Sophie, but there's a few names like Liam Moriarty now, and it took a while. But I know people who are big in the US. Nobody really knows who they are here. And vice versa. So I do think that's really important in when you're thinking about getting an agent, work out, what you want. And that can change, like, as well. But if you really are passionate about writing Australian stories, and you can make a career out of writing in Australia, I think that's one thing, people are so quick to say, no, you need a US deal and that's not necessarily the case.
Not the holy grail people think it is, because
No.
Often I think they're saying, oh, you need a US deal because they're thinking of the money. But if you've ever been in the United States and walked into a Barnes and Noble and seen how many books are in there, that is the market you are going into. It is profoundly larger than this market.
So true. And as I said, I've had 2 books contracted in the US. And I know many people have had books contracted in the US, and it's like, oh, finally, I'm breaking out. This is it. And they don't do any good. And so I do think Australia is often overlooked as a market where you can, really grow. But I think, choosing an agent, it's worthwhile thinking on that, because if you want to grow here in Australia, I would definitely be looking for an Australian agent, not a US one.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, with that doozled you, Renae.
Yeah, I'm sitting here awestruck. No, and like I said at the beginning, like, it's such a big, I think when I was submitting as that aspiring author, it was kind of easier to just go, here I am, world, and here is everything that I've got to anyone who would, be interested in. And that power dynamic that you spoke about before around, it's not just an agent choosing you. You've got to choose that agent. I think now that I'm further on in, with some books out, I feel the responsibility of picking the right agent if I'm going to go down that track a lot more than I would have before getting a deal.
That makes so much sense. And it's also, now in some ways you've done the hard yards. You've got that first deal. Although I know it always used to be the case of it's harder to get an agent than a publishing contract, people used to say. And I think, but I do, think that, you have made some contacts. And Renae is also the contests manager for the Romance Writers Australia. And Renae is only new in this role, but you will meet a lot of publishers through that role. You've done the hard yards in terms of getting that first contract, which is, I wouldn't say that's the hardest thing, because I think actually staying in this career is the hardest thing, right? Like, it's getting another contract and another contract. But you have done that, and you have got contracts in the industry, and those will only be growing. So really, you're not in the same position as you were before. So that makes a whole load of sense that you feel differently. And I would be doing what Sophie said, read manuscripts, in terms of not rushing. Don't rush to an agent, either, but really do your research and work out, what you want.
I'm just going to pause at this point and say, Rach, do you have a pressing commitment to get to at this time?
I do have, I mean, I can catch up quickly if need be, but I don't want to rush Renae. So if there's any more questions, go for it.
I so appreciate that. But no, that is my list, and some that you guys have very, very generously answered and given your own experiences. And I know I'm grateful for it. And I'm sure there's going to be listeners who are also really grateful for what you two can share with your, your combined experience, not just writing books, but being, you know, having agents and publishing, and just you cover the whole gamut. And so yeah, so thank you.
Oh,
Oh, thank you.
I will also say, if you are writing a query letter, I do actually have a 10-minute TikTok that I just
Oh, there you go.
on how to write a pitch / query letter. So my tips are all in that TikTok. It's the only 10 minutes that I have, if anyone's on my TikTok, which is at
I think there are. I've seen you getting lots of questions that, you know, you have to answer. So obviously there's people there.
You definitely
Renee, you can see that video, and the tips are there for writing a letter if you need them.
fantastic. Thank
Good
you.
luck in making your decision. And good luck in making your decision about whether or not you need to get an agent, and moving forward with the next contracts and stuff. And yeah, if you have any other questions for us, we're here.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining us, Renee.
Thanks. Bye.
Well, Rach, I really enjoyed the opportunity to meet Renee, because I hadn't met her before, and to hear her questions, and hopefully she had some useful information out of that. And look, if anyone's listening or watching and they would like to know more about that subject or any subject, they can contact us at sophie@sophie-green-author.com.
Yes, and if you don't feel like coming in and having a chat, although it's great to have someone asking us questions like that, and we've had a few great discussions now with people, you can just email and we will answer it either anonymously, I can't even say that, or if you just don't want your voice, we'll answer it however. So send us your questions, throw us some curly ones.
The next time we record, Rach, we will be answering a listener question. So I'm going to let you go to your present commitment, and I will see you very soon.
Okay, good night.
Bye.